Well, hello everybody. I'm talking to you today on the new studio quality microphone that my son bought me for Christmas. And I really like it. When it's working, it's got the green light on, and when I mute it, and when it's on, it's green. Off, it's red. Anyway, as y'all know, some of you know that follow me and stuff, my son was sick over Christmas and we thought it was the thing. But thanks to prayer and everything from my prayer group and stuff, that, it turned out not to be the thing. He thinks it was food poisoning because he said he had some spinach dip, and right after that he didn't feel good. Well, he had a terrible headache and the throughts, and I forget what else he said. He had bad headache and throughts, and he was throwing up all the time. So I'm glad that was not that food poisoning isn't a thing, but it isn't the thing. So he came here for Christmas last night. He's all better now. And I praise the Lord for that. Now I'm gonna go get my lesson ready and come back and do that. Be back in a minute. Hey everybody, I wanted to take this time and come back and say to you guys, I wish you all the very best Happy New Year. I pray that this year is better than last year for all of us, and that sometime this year that we find an end to this C-word illness that's going around that we're not supposed to talk about on YouTube. So I love you guys all so very much. I thank God for every one of you people that are loyal subscribers and come to see what this old geezer's got to say. And I wish you all the very best Happy New Year, full of God's blessings. I wish blessings of all good, true, pure, righteous, and holy things on all of you this year, all your lives. May the Lord touch you and bless you richly this coming year. And I love you in the name of Jesus, because Jesus is Lord. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back with today's reading. And it'll be in the book of Mark, which you have to forgive me because last time my pages flipped on me and I actually read Acts instead of Mark. Sorry about that, I didn't notice it. Thank you, Vernie, for telling me. And my son, I thank you so much, son. I love you so much. I wasn't aware you were watching my videos, but I'm thankful you do. He got me this new mic because he saw me having to wear my headset, and I was telling him about my hair sticking up and everything, and I couldn't make it look right with that, thing going across my head. It messed my hair all up, as you see in the previous video. My hair does its own thing sometimes. Thank you so much, son. I love you. And Alicia, my daughter, I love you too. And my son got me a floor jack. My daughter got me this, I guess you call it like a camping light thing, because when the power goes off, she was thinking about that, That thing's really nice. So I'll be able to see. Because I got oil lamps, but I don't have the oil for them or the wick things for them. So I do have one I can use, but there's not much oil in it. So hopefully I can get some of that what is it, clean heat or something like that. Tessa uses it, and so does Tim, I believe. I love you all very much, and I'll be back in a minute with, well, it'll be a minute to you, but it'll probably be a couple of hours for me. I got the wash machine going and everything, and kind of want to get that done. And then I'll be back with today's Bible reading. And God bless you all, and Happy New Year. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. You guys mean everything to me. You have no idea. I cover you all in prayer every day. Yes, I do. Thanks for watching. I'll be right back. Well, hello everybody. Let's see if we can do this. Okay. I believe we left off, anyway, where we wanted to leave off was chapter 6 of Mark. And I'm making sure I'm in Mark this time, because last time I didn't even look at the top. I sat my Bible down like this, and the pages turned on their own. And I ended up picking up what I thought was chapter 6 in Mark, and it was chapter 6 in Acts. So he's got Acts last time. Either that or the Lord wanted me to read it. That's what I did. So we'll pick up Mark chapter 6. Everybody ready? I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas. I sure did. Had scares, but yeah. And I know this year's getting started on a bad note for a lot of people already. I heard in my family, I went over and had a little New Year's dinner with my dad, so cut back from that, and I was going to put laundry away before I left, but I didn't, so that's waiting for me yet. I did get it in the dryer though, so I got that far. Oh well. Okay, everybody ready? Should have it by now. John chapter 6. Here we go again. I said John. Mark chapter 6. Till whenever. Jesus left there and went to his hometown, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were amazed. Where did this man get these things? They asked. What's his wisdom? What's this wisdom that has been given him? That he even does miracles. Isn't this the carpenter? Isn't this Mary's son and brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? Aren't his sisters here with us? And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, only in his hometown, among his relatives, and in his own house, is a prophet without honor. He could not do any miracles there, except lay his hands on a few sick people and heal them. And he was amazed at their lack of faith. Then Jesus went around teaching from village to village, calling the 12 to him. He sent them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over evil spirits. These were his instructions. Take nothing for your journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Wear sandals, but not an extra tunic. Whenever you enter a house, stay there until you leave that town. And if any place will not welcome you or listen to you, shake the dust off your feet when you leave as a testimony against them. They went out and preached that people should repent. They drove out many demons and anointed many sick with oil and healed them. King Herod heard about this, for Jesus' name had become well known. Some were saying John the Baptist has been raised from the dead, and that is why miraculous powers are at work in him. Others said he's Elijah, and still others claimed he's a prophet, like one of the prophets of long ago. But when Herod heard this, he said, John, the man I beheaded, has been raised from the dead. For Herod himself had given orders to have John arrested, and he had him bound and put in prison. He did this because of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife. Whom he had married. For John had been saying to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." So Herodias nursed a grudge against John and wanted to kill him, but he was not able to, because Herod feared John and protected him, knowing him to be a righteous and holy man. When Herod heard John, he was greatly puzzled. Yet he liked to listen to him. Finally, the opportune time came. On his birthday, Herod gave a banquet for his high officials and military commanders and leading men of Galilee. When the daughter of Herodias came and danced, she pleased Herod and his dinner guests. The king said to the girl, "Ask me for anything you want, and I'll give it to you." And he promised her with an oath, "Whatever you ask, I will give you, up to half my kingdom." She went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask for?" "The head of John the Baptist," she answered. At once the girl hurried to the king with the request, "I want you to give me the head of John the Baptist on a platter." The king was greatly distressed, but because of his oath and his dinner guest, he did not want to refuse her, so he immediately sent an executioner with orders to bring John's head. The man went, beheaded John in the prison, and brought back his head on a platter. He presented it to the girl, and he gave it to her, and she gave it to her mother. On hearing of this, John's disciples came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. The apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. Got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began teaching them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so the disciples came to him. "This is a remote place," they said. "It is already very late. Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat. But he answered, "You give them something to eat." They said to him, "That would take 8 months of a man's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on bread and give it to them to eat? How many loaves do you have?" he asked. "Go and see." When they found out, they said, 5 and 2 fish. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. So they sat down in the groups, hundreds and fifties. Taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and he broke the loaves. When he gave them to the disciples, he set before the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them, and they all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces of bread and fish. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into a boat and go ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. When evening came, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. About the 4th watch of the night, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him on the lake, they thought it was a ghost, or he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region and carried the sick on mats wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them even touch the edge of his cloak, and all who touched him were healed. The Pharisees and some of the teachers of the law who had come from Jerusalem and gathered around Jesus and saw some of his disciples eating food with hands that were unclean, that is, unwashed. The Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they give their hands a ceremonial washing, holding to the tradition of the elders. When they come from the marketplace, they do not eat unless they wash. And they observe many other traditions, such as the washing of cups, pitchers, and kettles. So the Pharisees and teachers of the law asked Jesus, Why don't your disciples live according to the tradition of the elders instead of eating their food with unclean hands? He replied, Isaiah was right when he prophesied about you hypocrites. It is written, These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teaching are but rules taught by men. You have let go of the commands of God and are holding to the traditions of men. And he said to them, you have a fine way of setting aside the commands of God in order to observe your own traditions. For Moses said, honor your father and mother, and anyone who curses his father and mother must be put to death. But ye say that if a man says to his father or mother, whatever help you might have got otherwise have received from me is korban, that is, a gift devoted to God. That's what that means. Then you no longer let him do anything for his father or mother. Thus you nullify the word of God by your tradition, and you have handed blah 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 that you have handed down. You do many things like that. Again, Jesus called the crowd to him and said, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside of a man can make him unclean, but by going into him. Rather, it is what comes out of a man that makes him unclean. After he had left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about the parable. Are you so dull, he asked? Don't you see that nothing that enters a man from the outside can make him unclean? For it doesn't go into his heart, but his stomach, and then out of the body. In saying this, Jesus declared all foods clean. Key point. He went on, what comes out of a man is what makes him unclean. For from within, out of a man's hearts come evil thoughts, sexual immorality, theft, murder, adultery, greed, malice, deceit, lewdness, envy, slander, arrogance, and folly. All these evils come from inside a man. Unclean. Come from inside and make a man unclean. Jesus left that place and went to the vicinity of Tyre. He entered the house and did not want anyone to know it, but he could not keep his presence secret. In fact, as soon as she heard about him, a woman whose little daughter was possessed by an evil spirit came and fell at his feet. The woman was Greek, born in Syrian Phoenicia. She begged Jesus to drive the demon out of her daughter. First, let the children eat all they want, he told her, for it is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. Yes, Lord, she replied, but even the dogs under the table eat the children's crumbs. Then he told her, for such a reply, you may go. The demon has left your daughter. She went home and found her child lying on the bed, and the demon gone. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went to Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of Decapolis. There some people brought to him a man that was deaf and could hardly talk. And they begged him to place his hand on the man. After he took him outside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers in the man's ears, and he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, oh boy, Elapathia, which means be opened. At this, The man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he said so, the more they kept talking about it. People were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. During those days, another large crowd gathered. Since they had nothing to eat, Jesus called to his disciples and said to them, I have compassion for these people. They have already been with me 3 days and have nothing to eat. If I send them home hungry, they will collapse along the way, because some of them have come a long distance. His disciples answered, But where in this remote place can anyone get enough bread to feed them? How many loaves do you have? Jesus asked. 7, they replied. He told the crowd to sit down on the ground. When he had taken the 7 loaves and given thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And they did so. They had a few small fish as well. He gave thanks for them also and told the disciples to distribute them. The people ate and were satisfied. Afterward, the disciples picked up 7 baskets full of broken pieces that were left over. About 4,000 men were present. And having sent them away, he got into the boat with his disciples and went to the region of Dalmanutha. The Pharisees came and began to question Jesus. To test him, they asked him for a sign from heaven. He sighed deeply and said, Why does this generation seek a miraculous sign? I tell you the truth, no sign will be given to it. Then he left them, got back into the boat, and crossed to the other side. The disciples had forgotten to bring bread, except for 1 loaf they had with them in the boat. Be careful, Jesus warned them. Watch out for the yeast of the Pharisees and that of Herod. They discussed with one another and said, It is because we have no bread. Aware of their discussion, Jesus asked them, Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not see or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes but fail to see and ears but fail to hear? And don't you remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000, and how many basketfuls of pieces did you pick up? 12, they replied. And when I broke the 7 loaves for the 4,000, how many basketfuls and pieces did you pick up? They answered, 7. He said to them, Do you still not understand? They came to Bethsaida. Some people brought a blind man and begged Jesus to touch him. He took the blind man by the hand and led him outside the village. When he had spit on the man's eyes and put his hands on him, Jesus asked, Do you see anything? He looked up and said, I see people. They look like trees walking around. Once more Jesus put his hands on the man's eyes. Then his eyes were opened. His sight was restored, and he saw everything clearly. Jesus sent him home, saying, Don't go into the village. Jesus and his disciples went up to the villages around Caesarea Philippi. And on the way, he asked them, Who do you say that I am? They replied, Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, one of the prophets. But what about you? He asked, Who do you say that I am? Peter answered, You are the Christ. Jesus warned them, not to tell anyone about him. He began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and teachers of the law, and that he must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But when Jesus turned and looked at the disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the things of God, but the things of men." Then he called the crowd to him, along with his disciples, and said, "If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me and the gospel will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous generation and sinful generation, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory with his holy angels." And he said to them, "I tell you the truth, some who are standing here will not taste death before they see the kingdom of God come with power." And that's the end. And we'll start next time at chapter 9. I actually did the first verse of 9. Got a little carried away. I want to thank y'all for watching. And remember, like I always say, whatever you do in life, make a difference. Be that difference for somebody. And you know, if we could all take just one person, tell one person about the Lord, lead one person to the Lord, I believe in my heart that we could take this world for Jesus. Who's going to be your one person? I believe there's someone out there that the Lord's already put in your mind. You need to talk to them. So go. Go into all the world and preach the gospel. This is Grampy Campy. And remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I. Bye till next time.